The year 2023 brought with it a fresh wave of concern for the Western Balkans as the International Monetary Fund released a new economic report. It wasn't good news. The report detailed alarming projections, highlighting persistent economic stagnation and a worrying trend of capital flight from the region. This wasn't a new story. It had been decades since international aid and structural reforms were first poured into these countries, yet the problems seemed to stick around. It felt like watching a movie on a loop, where the same scene played out again and again, just with different actors. One senior economist who had been interviewed for the report didn't mince words. He dismissed the region's economic woes with a stark simplicity, labeling them endemic, a cultural predisposition to underdevelopment. It was a powerful statement, almost clinical in its delivery, suggesting that the issues ran deeper than policy or aid packages. He spoke as if the very fabric of the region's society was wired for economic struggle, an inherent characteristic rather than a consequence of complex forces. Listening to that statement, one couldn't help but feel a strange sense of déjà vu. It wasn't the first time such dismissive, almost fatalistic explanations had been offered for the economic struggles of the Balkans. In fact, if you looked back through the archives, you'd find strikingly similar declarations made throughout the last century. Economists, politicians, and commentators from different eras, with different perspectives, had all, at various points, pointed to some intrinsic flaw in the region. It wasn't a unique failing of the current generation or a sudden downturn. It was a recurring pattern, a narrative that had been woven into the fabric of the region's history for a very long time. The faces changed, the exact figures shifted, but the underlying sentiment remained stubbornly consistent. History, it seems, has a cruel sense of repetition. It's almost as if the same script is being handed down through generations, with only minor edits here and there. This isn't just about bad luck or a string of unfortunate events. The current crisis, the one detailed in that 2023 IMF report, isn't an isolated incident. It's not some random economic hiccup that just popped up out of nowhere. Instead, it feels much more like a predictable outcome, a natural consequence of deeper, more systemic forces that have been at play for decades, perhaps even centuries. These forces, often unseen or misunderstood, have shaped the economic landscape of the Balkans in ways that make these recurring crises almost inevitable. They are the quiet hum beneath the surface, driving the region towards the same challenges again and again, regardless of the efforts to break free. It's a complex web, where every thread is connected to something that came before, leading to a pattern that's incredibly hard to disrupt. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you are watching from in the comments. To truly understand the roots of this seemingly endless economic struggle, we need to rewind, going back much further than the IMF report of 2023. Let's travel to the period right after World War I, a time when the geopolitical map of Europe was being redrawn. This era marked a critical turning point for the Balkan region as the old empires crumbled and new independent states emerged from their ruins. This was the initial fragmentation, a process that, while necessary for national self-determination, also laid the groundwork for future instability and economic challenges. These newly formed states, like Yugoslavia and Albania, found themselves in a difficult position. They inherited vast, largely agrarian economies, often with limited infrastructure, and a patchwork of diverse legal and administrative systems left over from the Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian empires. Imagine a typical family in a rural village during this time. Their daily life was simple, often centered around subsistence farming. They tilled small plots of land, relying on traditional methods, their lives dictated by the seasons. Market access was limited, transportation was rudimentary, and the idea of industrialization was a distant dream for most. They grew their own food, made their own clothes, and traded surplus goods with immediate neighbors. Money, when it was available, was often scarce, used primarily for taxes or essential items they couldn't produce themselves. This was not a foundation for robust economic growth. The immediate post-war years brought significant economic turbulence. One of the most pressing issues was the collapse of local currencies due to hyperinflation. Imagine working hard all day, only for the money you earn to lose half its value by the next morning. This wasn't just an abstract economic problem, it directly impacted people's ability to buy food, pay debts, and plan for the future. People lost their savings, trust in financial institutions evaporated, and economic activity became incredibly difficult. Adding to this, the challenge of integrating diverse economic systems was immense. For centuries, different parts of the Balkans had been governed by different empires, each with its own laws, currencies, trade routes, and administrative practices. Suddenly, these disparate pieces were expected to function as a cohesive national economy. It was like trying to build a single machine out of parts designed for entirely different engines. This lack of uniformity hindered trade, made investment difficult, and created internal barriers that slowed down development. Furthermore, foreign economic interventions, even those seemingly benevolent, often ended up prioritizing external interests over genuine local development. International loans came with conditions. Trade agreements favored larger, more industrialized nations, and the region's raw materials were often extracted for the benefit of distant powers. This created a cycle of dependency, where Balkan economies struggled to develop their own industrial bases or value-added production. They became suppliers of raw goods and consumers of finished products, a pattern that limited their economic sovereignty. Then came the Great Depression in the late 1920s and early 1930s. For already fragile economies, this global downturn was devastating. Demand for agricultural products plummeted, exports dried up, and foreign investment vanished. Widespread unemployment and poverty became rampant, fueling social unrest and political instability. The already limited progress made in the previous decade was undone, pushing these nations further into a cycle of economic hardship. These accumulated tensions weren't just abstract economic theories, they were lived experiences, shaping the daily reality of millions. Small policy decisions and international agreements, seemingly minor at the time, slowly eroded national economic sovereignty. Unfavorable trade agreements locked these young nations into disadvantageous positions. Debt accumulation, often for projects that didn't yield long-term economic benefits, created a heavy burden on future generations. These weren't just cracks, they were foundational fractures, preventing the region from building resilient, self-sufficient economies and instead fostering a deep-seated dependency that would echo for decades to come. The economic landscape was being molded, not for growth from within, but for a perpetual struggle against external forces and inherited weaknesses. The turn of the 1990s brought a new, brutal chapter, not of empire, but of a different kind of fragmentation. The Cold War ended, and with it, the artificial unity of Yugoslavia dissolved into a series of devastating conflicts. As the dust settled, the newly independent states faced the daunting task of rebuilding not just their physical infrastructure, but their entire economic systems. This was the moment of shock therapy, a term that perfectly captures the abrupt and often painful economic reforms imposed by international financial institutions like the IMF and World Bank. These programs pushed for rapid privatization, deregulation, and liberalization, often with a one-size-fits-all approach that failed to account for the unique local economic and social fabric of the Balkans. The consequences were far-reaching and for many devastating. Privatization, intended to create efficient markets, frequently devolved into asset stripping. State-owned enterprises, often the largest employers, were sold off quickly, sometimes to politically connected individuals or foreign entities, often at undervalued prices. This led to mass unemployment, as new owners restructured or simply dismantled operations, leaving thousands without jobs or social safety nets. The promised trickle-down effect rarely materialized. Instead, wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, while the majority struggled. These policies created highly indebted states, as governments took on new loans to cover budget deficits and finance reconstruction, often under conditions that further constrained their economic sovereignty. The human cost was immense. A significant brain drain began as skilled workers, educated professionals, and ambitious young people, seeing little opportunity at home, sought futures abroad. Doctors, engineers, academics, and even tradespeople left their countries in droves, depleting the human capital essential for long-term development. This exodus created a vicious cycle. Fewer skilled workers meant less innovation and growth, which in turn fueled more emigration. The region became perpetually reliant on remittances sent home by its diaspora and on foreign aid, rather than developing robust independent economies driven by internal production and innovation. This external dependence meant that economic policies were often shaped by the priorities of donors and international lenders, rather than the needs of the local population. This historical trajectory brings us back to the present, to the enduring cycle of economic stagnation, corruption and political instability that defines the region today. The Balkan economic crisis that never ends isn't some abstract inherent flaw of the people or the land. It's a systemic issue, deeply rooted in historical patterns of external dominance, internal fragmentation, and the repeated imposition of economic models ill-suited to local realities. From the post-WWI struggles to integrate disparate imperial legacies, through the interwar period of hyperinflation and the Great Depression, to the post-Cold War shock therapy, the region has consistently been subjected to forces that undermined its capacity for self-sufficient development. Each crisis, each intervention, layered new complexities onto an already fragile foundation. The current economic challenges are not a sudden occurrence, but the predictable outcome of these accumulated decisions and historical pressures. The region's economies struggle with limited industrial capacity, weak institutions, high unemployment, and pervasive corruption, all of which are echoes of past policies and events. The narrative of an endemic predisposition to underdevelopment ignores this complex history, reducing centuries of geopolitical and economic struggle to a simplistic, almost fatalistic, cultural trait. It overlooks the agency of external actors and the systemic forces that have shaped the region's economic destiny. The Balkan economy is not broken, it is merely caught in a loop. Engineered by history and maintained by circumstance,